Hi, I'm Kelly Ashton. I'm an educator for Handi Quilter, and we are in the education studio in Handi Quilter today, and we're going to talk about the 1.5-inch Hexi ruler. So I'm pretty excited about this ruler. It's a lot smaller than the first Hexagon that came out, and so it's really versatile. We can use it in a lot of different ways. So we're going to just go through some of the ideas that we have today, and I'll quilt a little bit out for you. The Hexagon makes a perfect border. So if you can see on here the different border ideas, and in the beginning of this row I kind of squished the triangles together because it makes a nice little triangle shape, and towards the end I slid them out a little farther so that it gave us a different design. But I double stitched those, and I'm going to stitch a couple out for you so you can kind of see how to hold the ruler. And one thing that I found with the Hexi template, it was really helpful to have the handy grip on there. So the handy grip really helps hold it because we have those 6 different angles that we're working with. So when we switch directions, that handy grip holds it right in place. So I'll get my needle down. And it also helped to have a straight line across the bottom to line this up against. And I'm going to raise my needle, and I'm just going to slide that groove right around the foot. And if you can see, I put a little piece of tape on this ruler on one of the lines because it has wonderful markings on here for us to use. But sometimes I get stitching and I forget about which line I'm using. So I put a little piece of orange tape on there, or you could use painter tape, whatever kind of tape you'd like. But it helps us to remember where we were stitching. So I'm just going to stitch across that bottom. And on this one, right at that point, I kind of had those points touching. So what that's going to do is bump my stitch 1/4 of an inch away from the last one. And when you're holding it, you need to hold safely all the way around. So I may have to pause and switch the positions of my hand so that I can hold it stable all the way across that stitching. This first point right here is lined up with the corner of that ruler. So I'm going to move it over just 1/4 of an inch. Line up that point with my last stitching, and that's where I'm going to do my echo, my hexagon. I'm going to follow the same lines. I'm going to adjust my hand position so that I'm holding it flat and safely all the way around. Okay, and if I raise my needle, I can slide that groove right out. Can you see how those hexagons work, stitching across there? On the next row, so one of my favorite sashing or border design ideas is to have diamonds across. I like to have the diamond kind of pop out. So who would have thought that a hexagon would make a perfect diamond shape in the center? But if I line this up and put a hexagon right here, that's what gives me my perfect diamond shape. Okay, all right, so I'm going to put my needle down. And what I need to do right here is the point, my last stitching point, I need to have it 1/4 of an inch away from there. So how it works is if I put my needle down in this corner, this point right here, and I just slide the hexagon, slide it straight across and over to the other point, when I stitch it around, that point lines perfectly up right there to give me my diamond shape. It lines it perfectly up if I use the markers that I've used. Like once again, this orange tape, if I line it up along that stitching line. And now I'm just going to stitch across the bottom and bump into the edge, and I'm going to slide the ruler over until I bump into the other edge. For some reason, I really like to stitch. I like to start out with my foot right in that groove. I lined up. And I can stitch around again. Adjust my hand position. And stitch and close off that stitch. I'm going to backtrack along that bottom and slide my ruler over once again. And I'm watching this straight line across the bottom to line it up on that last stitching, or my stitching seam along the bottom. And I can just keep going, and I can do hexagons all the way across. that when I'm finished, leave me with a fun diamond design. And then I went back in, as you can see, and did some free motion loops to make the diamonds really pop out. Okay, I want to advance the quilt a little bit so you can see the hexagons on the next row. Okay, we advanced the quilt, and I'm going to show you some ideas of ways that you can fill the hexagon shape. So with this one over here on the left, we just did a spirograph kind of into the center, and you can continue to use the hexagon ruler to fill. I just hold it up against my last stitching, keep moving, and I just move the ruler as I'm stitching towards the center. I just keep adjusting it so that it'll be my guideline for my 1/4 of an inch. Okay, the next one, you could make these continuous lined. I cut my thread and went to the next hexagon because I just made some flowers to fill there, and this is kind of a feathery flower on the next one. And who doesn't love continuous line? Anytime I can do a continuous line on a design idea, I get excited. And look what fun it does with the hexagon shape, giving you that 3-petaled kind of flower in the center. If you haven't tried, I think this is called a Zentangle twist. And I do it often in a square or a triangle shape. But I wanted to try it with this hexagon shape. And it got a little tricky when you got to the middle, but it still gives you a fun design there in the center. Okay, so we advanced the quilt, and I'm going to show you these last few design ideas with the Hexie. And with the Hexie, if you get some guidelines on there, like these 8-line stencils, or even, I think this one is 16-line stencil. If you mark those out as many lines as you want, you can just use the Hexie. And if I just line 2 of those points up on those white lines, I can just stitch it out, and I do have to do a little bit of backtracking, and the center of this one ended up looking like a star, so I just backtracked around the center to make the star stick out just a little bit more. But I would stitch around the hexagon and then come back to here, rotate it to my next line while I'm lining up the straight lines to the center and to the outside, and stitch around it again and just keep rotating it all the way around the block. This one, I drew a circle in the center, and I used that circle kind of to keep me out of the very center, and it gave me a guideline of where I wanted to line up to keep it consistently the same from the center. On this design over here, I put my hexagon right to the center point and rotated it from the center point, and then it gave me this fun little fan shape in the center. The possibilities are endless with an 8-line or a 16-line stencil. Here's some ideas that I drew on paper. And then these are done with the 16 lines. So I can just, and this one I turned the hexagon so the flat side was toward the center. This one I turned the hexagon so a point was aimed towards the center. I found it really helpful on these to make a circle in the center to give me a space that I wanted to space away from the edge with. So, okay, hopefully you're getting some ideas that you can use these Hexie template for. Now, I bet some of you are wondering how we stitched out that Zentangle twist. So just before we go, I'm going to do some stitching so that you can see how that twist works on a hexagon. We'll use this little hexagon right here at the bottom. And when you stitch out a twist, it looks so complicated, but it really is very simple. We need to start right on a point, but then I need to move. I want it to go on an angle. So obviously if I stitch straight, I'm going to stitch right on the last line I did, and I want it to bump away from the edge a little bit. So I'm just going to hold the ruler so that it's not straight, so that it's angled a little bit, and it will bump that first line away from the last one. And I've got to stitch all the way to the line and stop there. And then I'm just going to, the tricky part is this, is you have to make sure that you hit every line. You don't want to skip one of your hexagon sides. So I'm just going to keep rotating this. And I can actually, if I touched the corner with the edge of my ruler, it would bump it away 1/4 of an inch. And I don't want to bump it away quite 1/4, so I'm just about 1/8 of an inch away. I'm just sliding that away from the edge. I hope you can kind of see how that's stitching out. I'm just continually rotating it and bouncing it away from the edge so that I get a diagonal line. I don't know why I don't hold that one far enough away. It really is long enough to be able to do that. And I'm stopping at the last stitched line. I stitch all the way to that line, stop and rotate, stop and rotate it, stop at that line. If you're really careful, you keep the shape of the hexagon. Okay, I'm going to do just a couple more, then I'm going to move it back so you can see. I'm going to do a little tie-off stitch, raise my needle, and can you see how that twist starts to come together as you rotate that ruler all the way around the edge? So I really hope you like the Hexie ruler as much as I do. Have fun stitching.